The story of the United States began in the early 1600s. Brave people sailed across the vast Atlantic Ocean. They came from Europe, primarily from England. They sought new lives for many reasons. Some wanted religious freedom. Others hoped for economic opportunity and land. These determined settlers established 13 distinct colonies. These colonies stretched along the eastern coast of North America. Each colony developed its own character and way of life, laying the groundwork for a diverse future. Life in these early colonies was often very challenging. Settlers faced harsh winters and unknown lands. They worked hard to build homes and farms. They learned to adapt to their new environment. Over time, the colonies grew and prospered. They developed their own economies and systems of local government. A unique American identity began to emerge. People started to see themselves as different from those in Great Britain. This growing sense of independence would soon lead to dramatic changes for everyone. The relationship with Great Britain became strained over many years. The British government imposed new taxes on the colonies. The colonists felt this was unfair. They had no representatives in the British Parliament. No taxation without representation became a famous cry. Protests and boycotts of British goods became common. Events like the Boston Tea Party showed the growing anger. Tensions continued to rise, pushing the colonies closer to a historic decision. The path to open conflict seemed almost inevitable. Finally, in 1776, a bold step was taken. The leaders of the colonies gathered. They signed the Declaration of Independence. This document declared that the 13 colonies were free and independent states. It stated that all men are created equal. The American Revolutionary War had already begun. It was a long and difficult struggle against a powerful empire. George Washington led the Continental Army with courage. After years of fighting, the colonies won their freedom. The United States of America was born, a new experiment in self-government. In its early years, the new United States focused on growth. The nation was young and full of ambition. Leaders looked westward, towards vast, unexplored territories. In 1803, President Thomas Jefferson made a remarkable deal. He purchased the Louisiana Territory from France. This Louisiana purchase nearly doubled the size of the country. The idea of manifest destiny took hold. Many Americans believed it was their nation's destiny to expand across the continent. This expansion brought new opportunities, but also new conflicts. However, a dark shadow hung over the growing nation. This shadow was the institution of slavery. Millions of people of African descent were enslaved, mainly in the southern states. Their forced labor was central to the South's agricultural economy. The northern states had largely abolished slavery. They were becoming more industrialized. These economic and moral differences created deep divisions. The question of whether new states would permit slavery became a major point of contention. The nation was slowly tearing itself apart from within. The conflict over slavery eventually led to a terrible war. In the 1860s, the Civil War erupted. Southern states seceded from the Union to form the Confederacy. President Abraham Lincoln was determined to preserve the United States. The war was brutal and cost hundreds of thousands of lives. Families fought against families and brothers against brothers. After 4 long years, the Union was victorious. Slavery was abolished throughout the country with the 13th Amendment. The nation faced the enormous task of healing and rebuilding. Following the Civil War, America entered an age of rapid change. This period was known as the Industrial Revolution. New inventions like the telephone and the light bulb transformed daily life. Factories sprang up in cities, creating new jobs. Railroads crisscrossed the country, connecting distant places. Immigrants arrived in large numbers, seeking work and a better life. Cities grew at an unprecedented rate. America was becoming a major industrial power. This economic strength would soon allow it to play a larger role on the world stage. For much of its early history, America tried to stay out of European affairs. This policy was known as isolationism. However, in the early 20th century, a great war began in Europe. World War I engulfed the continent from 1914. The United States initially remained neutral, but events like the sinking of American ships eventually drew the nation into the conflict in 1917. American soldiers and resources played a significant role. Their involvement helped tip the balance in favor of the Allied powers. The war ended in 1918, changing the world map. The decade after World War I was a time of great excitement. It was called the Roaring Twenties. New music like jazz filled the airwaves. People enjoyed new freedoms and technologies like automobiles. The economy seemed to boom, but this prosperity was not built on a solid foundation. In 1929, the stock market crashed. This event triggered the Great Depression. It was a period of severe economic hardship. Millions of Americans lost their jobs and homes. Banks failed and businesses closed. It was a difficult time for the entire nation. Just as America was recovering, another global conflict erupted. World War II began in Europe in 1939. The United States tried to remain neutral once more. But on December 7, 1941, Japan attacked Pearl Harbor in Hawaii. This surprise attack brought America directly into the war. The nation mobilized its people and industries on a massive scale. Millions of men and women served in the armed forces or worked in war factories. American forces fought in Europe, Africa, and Asia. Their contributions were crucial to the Allied victory over Nazi Germany and Imperial Japan in 1945. The end of World War II marked a new era. The United States emerged as one of the world's two major superpowers. The other was the Soviet Union. These two nations had very different political and economic systems. The US championed democracy and capitalism. The Soviet Union promoted communism. This ideological struggle became known as the Cold War. It was a period of intense rivalry and suspicion. The development of nuclear weapons by both sides created a dangerous standoff. The world lived under the constant threat of a devastating war. The Cold War period lasted for several decades. It was a time of global tension, but also of significant domestic progress. The civil rights movement gained momentum in the 1950s and 1960s. Led by figures like Martin Luther King Jr., African Americans fought for equal rights. They challenged segregation and discrimination through peaceful protests. Landmark legislation was passed, ending legal segregation. Also during this era, America achieved a stunning scientific feat. In 1969, NASA astronauts Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin landed on the moon. It was a triumph of human ingenuity. The Cold War finally came to an end in the late 1980s and early 1990s. The Berlin Wall, a symbol of the division, fell in 1989. The Soviet Union itself dissolved in 1991. This marked the beginning of a new global landscape. Around the same time, another revolution was quietly beginning. This was the rise of the internet. Personal computers became more common. The World Wide Web connected people and information in unprecedented ways. This digital revolution transformed communication, business, and everyday life across the globe. The early 21st century brought new and unforeseen challenges. On September 11, 2001, terrorist attacks struck the United States. Airplanes were hijacked and crashed into the World Trade Center in New York and the Pentagon in Washington, D.C. Thousands of innocent lives were lost. These events had a profound impact on American society and foreign policy. The US launched a war on terror. This led to lengthy military engagements in Afghanistan and Iraq. The nation grappled with new questions of security and liberty. In more recent years, the world has faced other significant trials. The global COVID-19 pandemic, starting in 2020, caused widespread illness and death. It disrupted economies and daily lives worldwide. The United States, like other nations, struggled to manage the health crisis and its consequences. Today, on May 24, 2025, the US continues to be a major global power. It faces ongoing domestic and international challenges. Its future potential as a leader depends on its ability to adapt, innovate, and address the complex issues of a changing world. The journey continues.